Hi, I'm Grace and I work in the research and marketing team here at Celerity.
And I'm Phil, CRM consultant at Celerity.
And this presentation is designed to deep dive into the topic of today, which is about marketing to data conscious consumers and provide some contextual insight. So I thought we'd start today with conscious consumerism as a whole ideal, I suppose. It's not a new idea. The increasing awareness through online and social media has actually mean that it's on the rise. There are more consumers who want to make positive decisions about what they buy. On screen are a few examples which you may recognise. There have been big stories throughout the year based on plastic, palm tree oil with the latest Iceland Christmas advert, the automotive industry as a whole as they move to electric cars, and loads of industries like the diamond and fur industries which have been affected. So how can a brand create trust with its consumers is now becoming increasingly multi-layered. So that leads us on to data conscious consumers and how they came to be, really. Well, they did so with our increasing usage and understanding of digital. 2018 showed us that internet users are increasing by 7% year on year, social media 13% year on year, mobile 4% year on year, and we all know that these usage figures hit the billions. So with the digital world growing and our universal use of Internet of Things, our lives have become even more entwined with this digital world. And with that, our understanding of the role that data plays and our individual data trail that we personally leave behind when we engage online. So the DMA segments data conscious consumers into three categories. There is data unconcerned, which are a portion of UK consumers who show little or no concern with the issue of data privacy or data exchange. There are then data pragmatists, who are consumers who are willing to part with personal information, so long as there is a clear reward for doing so. And then we have data fundamentalists, consumers who show an unwillingness to share personal data at all.
So what we've seen in recent years is a small change in two of these groups, pragmatists and fundamentalists. And what we've seen is actually since 2012 a drop in data fundamentalists, those who won't exchange their data. And actually evidence suggests that whilst that had a slight increase from 2015 to 2017, firstly, customers are aware that the world works with data, the economy works with data. And also GDPR is actually potentially helped here, as some surveys show that customers, because of GDPR, actually are more confident to share their data with companies, because they know these companies now have to demonstrate that they're taking care of the data, and there are large fines if they don't. So we're actually on the rise as data pragmatists and data unconcerned, which is good news for marketers because we still have access to these customers and the ability to market to them. However, this data unconcerned group that's growing tends to be potentially more millennials and stuff. The fact that they're not really caring what they let you do with their data potentially means it's actually harder to market to them, because they're maybe not as receptive to the marketing you're going to send back to them, because they haven't paid too much attention to the data they've given you as a company. And I think we've all seen, the mention of GDPR there. We've seen some of the companies that have been in the news, and this adds to the consciousness thing, the conscious consumer. Obviously, big data breaches, big data hacks are big news, and they get spread across the social channels, and people get worried that their data's gone missing, and these companies have to email out to the customers to tell them to reset their passwords and all of this sort of stuff. So it can mean it means people are more aware of this. Luckily, as we've seen in the previous slide, maybe that's not having such a big impact overall. However, with these companies specifically, whilst it's unlikely that very loyal customers would be moved, particularly if you're in there like in the British Airways kind of loyalty scheme or miles scheme, certainly those customers who weren't particularly loyal and maybe did have an account just sort of lying around, they might choose to then delete or unsubscribe. And also new customers coming on, the prospects, maybe they're a bit more tentative to share the data with you. So it potentially means it's more difficult to build a relationship and therefore personalize to these new customers you may bring on. I have my own story here about Under Armour, one of these brands that was hacked. So I have their MyFitnessPal app, which I have to exchange a lot of data with: stride length, weight, calorie intake, water intake, exercise. They probably know more about me than my wife does to some extent. However, the emails they send me, on 2 occasions I've received emails about sports bras, which are irrelevant to me. So what we see there is the one channel which I'm going to remain particularly loyal to, which is the app, which I share a lot of data with. However, I'm now kind of ignore their emails that come to me, because I know it's not worth opening them, because they're not personalized to me. And so what you can see is potentially erosion of trust down a channel, and which could lead to, if you don't have other channels backing that up, could lead to an erosion of engagement across for the whole brand. And interestingly, with these 2 groups, the data unconcerned and data pragmatists, and in fact even with the data fundamentalists, whilst these people, this may be their overall attitude across the market, actually what we find is people have these differing attitudes to different companies. So we work with a couple of brands who we've looked at this across their email database, and we see, you know, upwards of 50%, and in fact for one client upwards of 80% of customers not opening their emails. And what we see here is a lot higher likelihood of these customers who don't open engage with their emails being customers that haven't shared much of their data. So that shows how important it is to be able to have that trust with a customer to collect their data, and then be able to use that data to market to them. We see many different data points that show that customers actually want to be marketed to with personalized content. In fact, almost often it's good enough to just say, hey, look, give us your data and we won't send you irrelevant marketing. So whilst, you know, around 3/4 of people today are unconcerned or pragmatic about the data they share, this is shifting between the different populations. So with millennials, we see that they're actually more likely to be data unconcerned, whereas actually the sort of Generation X, 35 to 55-year-olds, are becoming more data pragmatic. Potentially, particularly 35 to 55-year-olds, they're the ones who are super busy. You know, they've got kids, they've got older parents that they're looking after, they've got loans, credit cards, holidays, pets, cars, all of that sort of stuff. And actually, if they're starting to become more likely to be kind of self-filtering the marketing messages they're getting because they get so many, then potentially that shows we're going to have to work harder to acquire data pragmatists with our own brands to ensure that we still have that kind of permission and relevance when we market to them. We also have to be careful of those generation shifts as well. While 73% of customers in the market rank email as their preferred marketing channel, which is great for email marketers, actually 1/3 of millennials, whilst they make up a smaller amount of the population, rank social media the highest. So this brings back the point of different marketing channels needing to engage with the right people and ensuring that you are being relevant to customers across multiple channels. So you need to demonstrate that value exchange. You need to understand what it is the customer's looking for, what channels do they want to be marketed to on, and how best to reuse the customer's data that they've given you to make sure you are honoring that promise of being relevant to them. So when we look at the value exchange, then this exchange of a customer saying, I will give you my data in exchange for you doing something that means I'm going to get something back in return, likely being a relevant piece of marketing that's not going to waste my time. So a Salesforce survey found that 57% of customers are willing to share their personal data in exchange for personalized offers or discounts. 52% of consumers would share personal data in exchange for product recommendations, and 53% will do the same for personalized experiences. So, but interestingly, whilst these customers said they would happily share kind of personality traits and things they're interested in as a positive share to the company, what they didn't really like is when the company does that behind their backs almost. So when they've used their browsing history to develop a profile of this customer and try and use that to marketing. And I think, you know, customers can very much see this. You know, there might be just something that maybe a friend had told them to look at on a site that they wouldn't normally buy, and then that's very obviously presented back to them as a remarketing message on their social channels or whatever. And you know, a customer can really feel that. And I think the main point here is about control, about the customer saying, no, I will tell you what I want you to market to me about. And of course, companies are going to have to give those consumers the ability to be able to exchange that sort of data. And so what we find is, you know, what do customers find valuable? Personalization, of course. Real-time relevancy, absolutely. It's got to be in the moment, and it's got to be relevant to their situation at that point in time. Predictive marketing, understanding their needs or understanding products that they didn't even know they wanted, that the company knows will be useful to them. And of course, convenience, which is linked in with that, sort of very much timeliness and you know, right message, right product. And why bother personalizing? Well, any metric that we can look at, and here's just 4. Email average order value, conversion rate, click-through rate, and open rate even all increase massively when email content is personalized. So it's definitely worth doing, but you need data to achieve this. Very much demographic data to understand, you know, even age, gender at its very basic will help, but certainly more about you know, income and all of that sort of stuff, and ideally that the customer has specifically told you themselves. Transactional data, of course, are they a new customer, are they existing customer, what do they usually buy? All of that can help you put the right products at the right time in front of the customers. Preference data, of course, and the ability to know which, not just which channels you can market to a customer on, but also which channels they prefer you to market on. And things like clickstream data to understand what they've been looking at online and to be able to retarget them then with relevant and timely messages.
So now we're going to demonstrate 3 examples of value exchanges that some brands are doing today. So one of the most popular and effective elements of a value exchange is personalization, from personalizing the journey the customer takes to the conversation we have with them. So Spotify use personalization to create personal, data-driven content that they actually report back to the consumer. This is what your year looks like with us. They create an air of transparency with this campaign, so they're openly showing you how much data they have collected, and in between the lines, the awesome experience that you've had in exchange for that data. Abercrombie and Fitch do a very similar thing. So again, they use personalization to create this air of transparency. They provide their single customer view actually within the My Account section. So whether you're on the website or you're on the app, you're able to see a personalized timeline of when you have added data or interacted with the brand or purchased something. So as Phil mentioned, consumers are still less comfortable with marketers tracking and reporting on their engagement and digital movement with a brand. But Abercrombie and Fitch try to ease this concern with rewarding engagement. So as well as rewarding them with points for physical data input and purchases, for merely downloading the app, you can earn 100 points, and you can earn even more points when each time you complete an element of your profile. So the second one is convenience. So convenience overall is about removing friction. There are many ways brands do this through delivery, self-service, automation, subscription. But for an exchange of data, how can we remove friction for the consumer? Well, one popular route which our client Greenkin has taken is to help personalize and shorten the customer journey through social sign-in. So sign into websites with one click. You can like and share and comment more easily. We can surface more relevant advertising to you that's actually beneficial to you and not just annoying. So there's an element of, you know, we're going to allow you to experience, have a better experience through doing this. And of course, the actual brand gets a lot of data and potential insight into a consumer through their social channels. Another popular option is replenishment campaigns. So this is when a consumer will tell you about their product, their usage or their frequency, or whatever it is that you can create a timeline to trigger this replenishment need. And basically, it lets the brand provide the product to the consumer's schedule. And, you know, we're completely skipping the reorder journey. So it's shortening their customer journey a lot. And with Longcom, this service includes free shipping and, you know, luxury samples. So for the consumer, life is easier. They get the product they need when they need it, and they get a few extra nice bits. For Longcom, the customer is a lot stickier. This tactic can even remove the consumer's consideration phase entirely, which is obviously great for the brand. And then thirdly, we're talking about hyper-relevancy using preference centers. So as well as trust and transparency, consumers like to feel in control, and preference centers empower users to take control of their brand experience. So it doesn't always take a complex algorithm to kind of give them the next step. Preference centers are a strong option for improving relevancy with the aim of improving engagement. They can also help reverse negative engagement. So if you start providing hyper relevancy, they can, you know, consumers might stop ignoring your emails, or they might switch back on their push notifications. A couple of examples here is Thread, the clothing company. They basically mirror the personal stylist approach, but online. And Sephora do a very similar thing, but with a beauty profile. So with Thread, that they will ask you for, you know, what is your favorite type of clothing? What are your favorite colors? What's your favorite fabrics? What are your sizes? And then basically they pair you with an actual stylist, or what appears like an actual stylist, who has a Twitter account, an Instagram account, who writes blogs. And that actual stylist will email you whenever you have asked to be emailed, whether it's twice a week or once a month, you choose. And their email is quite bland. So it's usually the same, but the image changes. It's like, hi, I've added 5 new recommendations for you. Please take a look and rate your favorites. And you click through, and they're keeping it very simple, because you as the consumer know what's in store. You know that by clicking through, you have 5 things that are catered for you. They're in stock at your size. And yeah, it basically helps that kind of conversion through opening to clicking to actually purchasing. And with Sephora, it's a very similar thing. They're able to create a complete beauty profile of you. So they ask you for your skin color, your skin condition. Is it dry, oily? Your hair color, your eye color. Do you have flat hair? Do you have dry hair? They ask you loads of things to basically create this profile of you. And then in that, they're actually able to do a more subtle cross-sell. So instead of just surfacing you relevant products, which they can, if they have a new foundation out, they will market the color that matches your profile. But they'll also be able to present you with looks. So looks with eyeshadow, you know, skin conditioning and foundation. And this is the brush that we use to create this look. And suddenly cross-selling becomes a lot easier and a lot seamless, and just part of the experience for the consumer. The other one actually is quite interesting, our customer GWR. They actually incentivize consumers to keep their preferences up to date. So they understand that if they're going to start a relevant, you know, real-time conversation, they need to keep it up. So they actually incentivize them to do this. And it's funny that, you know, data has become so vital to us that the journey is mirroring that of a purchase journey, but the other way around. So, you know, we would usually be the consumer and the brand would be the brand. And if we want that jumper, I'm going to provide you money and you're going to give me that jumper. Well, it's kind of switched now. So, you know, the brand wants something. They want your data. In order to do that, they're going to pay you through, you know, 2,000 Nectar points. They're going to give you a type of currency, and you're going to give something in return. So what is the most valuable data you can collect? Data that allows you to engage in the moment. So again, talking about hyper-relevancy, trying to improve engagement. Keep healthy behaviors, you know, keep them clicking your emails, reading your blogs, engaging with your app, entering competitions. Data that allows you to build emotional relationships. So you're able to actually personalize them. We're having a one-to-one conversation. We know you and you know us, and there's a lot of transparency and trust built in that. Data that helps make the experience unique. So this is about kind of, I suppose, being loyal to the brand, having an experience that no other brand can deliver for them, being competitive. And the data, this sort of data that you want to collect is typically found beyond the sign-up process. So a lot of brands will focus a lot of energy on getting as much data as they can through that newsletter sign-up, or through that competition entry, or through that post-purchase journey. But what they really find is that they're kind of asking for all of their contact details, your mobile number, your email. But we don't know anything about you. We don't actually know what conversation to have with you. We have your contact details, but what do we say? So in the end, we end up having a very irrelevant, useless to the consumer type of conversation at the very beginning, which doesn't help us then to gather more data as we go along, or keep delivering value. A lot of the times, this is when they might start ignoring your emails or switching off to what you're trying to tell them. So one example that I wanted to share of a brand that we think is doing very, very well. Just a quick bit of background. In my last job, I used to work with a company that did the technology side of this project. So Danone Nutricia is a brand that we believe taps into the emotional side of purchasing decisions. And basically they sell baby formula. So they're interested in selling their baby formula at the end of a customer journey. But what they found was that if they engaged earlier and tried building an emotional relationship at the very beginning with the consumer when they got pregnant, they would be able to actually up their conversion and, again, kind of remove this consideration phase in the customer lifecycle. So they would engage with the mother when she was pregnant. She would input, how far along she was or her due date. And then basically the app or the website account would drip feed educational content to her whenever she needs it. If she was in week 3 and there's, she's experiencing morning sickness, or in further weeks when you know that the baby is going through a lot of growth, what do you need to eat? What exercise should you be doing? So it was educational content that builds trust. They were also focused on a personal long-term conversation. So everything that they surface to them is contextual. It is always about how far along she is and the personal preference details that the mother has put in. This also helps in the end Danone to filter the actual right products that is best suited for them. And again, being able to do this, build this trust and transparency up front, it dramatically decreases this consideration phase towards the end of the customer life cycle, because they know that this company understands them. They know what's best for them and their child. They've built this emotional attachment. We've almost gone through the pregnancy together and the child's healthy and come out okay. And the stats are very impressive to support this. So the personalization benefits were that the conversion uplifts went up from 19% to 205% across sales, membership signups, and engagement. Their average monthly growth was 75%, and their average monthly repeat purchases were 140%. And this program went live in 2016.
So we've all seen kind of graphs of journeys like this. The world these days is, consists of a multitude for most brands of digital and physical touch points. And sort of the irony is almost that, your best, most valuable customers who are most likely to have exchanged the most data with you are those customers who are going to have experienced more of these touch points in general, because they're engaging more with you at all of them. So with this issue of data exchange and making sure you're constantly proving back to the customer that you are personalizing for them, this becomes ever more difficult. And of course, technology and the increasing MarTech technology is going to help to some extent here to try and piece all this together. What we see, back to my MyFitnessPal example, we've seen one channel doing almost hyper personalization, where it knows absolutely everything about me and is able to provide me with the right blogs and the right information and the right motivation to keep eating right and losing weight and whatever else. However, their emails appear completely unconnected to this data stream and give me a very much an unconnected and poor experience. With one of our clients, who I mentioned, who we see 50% of customers not engaging with their emails over a large period of time. You know, what they really had there was an email strategy that was just sending out awareness campaigns, which is very much the left-hand side of that graph. So they were very much just saying, hey, here's our latest product, or here's our latest offer, and kind of missing the fact that a lot of their loyal customers were obviously they were, of course, they were aware of the products and deals. They were going to that brand, you know, every week, every other week, and experiencing it. So they were getting a very much a generic experience for being one of their best customers. So when we helped this brand implement kind of real-time triggers and journeys that were based off the customer's activity, what we saw was upwards of a 400% increase in revenue attributed to emails. Now, obviously, this didn't mean that necessarily the revenue went up 400% in total. However, understanding that then your email marketing isn't just being wasted, and you are engaging on a personalized and relevant level, and you know, proving to the customer you are doing this, and then getting them to buy into you and trust you more, is obviously, you know, going to have more payback than just an attributed revenue figure. So really being able to understand the journeys that your best customers are going to take, and understand that those customers want at least a demonstration of personalization across those channels, plotting out that key journey, such as the one up on screen now, that your customers might take, and making sure you've got the technology in place to deliver that personalization, will be key to doing it better than your rival brands, which is of course the point. So in summary, you know, here's the three biggies that are takeaways from this. First one around data. Consider assessing all relevant customer data to identify engagement levels, to understand who are your pragmatists, unconcerned and fundamentalists, and try and understand what it's going to take to move those people up the ladders from saying, I won't share any data with you, and, you know, let's face it, dare to delete them from your database if they're never going to come back, if they've demonstrated that they've only ever bought once with you, they opened up a guest account and basically were saying, this is a one time for me, I don't ever want to do business with you again, giving them the chance to re-engage, and then maybe deleting. And then how to move your unconcerned, where the data transaction is just being like, yeah, okay, well, I've given you some data, but I don't expect much back from it. How do we convince those people that we are going to personalize and be relevant on that data and turn them into data pragmatists? And how are we going to continue proving to those data pragmatists that we are taking their data seriously, we are using it in the right way, and we are adding value to that relationship by using it in the right way? So that leads us really on to the second one. Think about your company's value exchange. What are you offering? You know, you've got this data. How can you as a company add more value to that customer's life, to make it more relevant for them, to make them engage with you better, to make it easier for them? All of those things we said: convenience, relevancy in the moment, because that we know is going to drive more return on investment in the end, as we saw from all those graphs earlier. And then finally, and this is probably the hardest one, look at aligning your people, processes and technology to deliver successful value exchanges for a healthier customer base. And we saw on that previous graph, that's quite hard to do. But actually, if you are aware of those journeys you're most valuable, or customers you most want to engage with are taking, and making sure you at least get the people, process and technology aligned around those key journeys, that's a great starting point to deliver on the value exchange for those customers. And once that's nailed down, start looking at how that is going to benefit other customers and how to expand that out to benefit more and more of your customers.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Phil, for presenting today, and thank you, everyone, for listening. And if you would like to know more about how to overcome your obstacles for data-driven marketing, or how to slowly start to achieve some objectives you may have for data-driven marketing, please feel free to get in touch with the Celerity team. Thank you.